The three Republican frontrunners for Congressional District 3 are in studio for a special debate edition of Nevada Politics Today. I'm your moderator, VictorJoecks. Danny Tarkanian is a businessman who won the Republican CD3 primary in 2016 and is running again. Senator Scott Hammond is a two-term state senator and former educator who continues to work in education. And Michelle Mortensen is a former consumer advocate television reporter and 7-time Emmy winner. We're going to start with questions, giving each candidate 45 seconds to respond, and we'll conclude with 2-minute closing statements. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Let's start with March 16th. It was the last day of filing, and this race changed dramatically with a presidential tweet. President Trump put out, "It would be great for the Republican Party of Nevada and its unity if good guy Danny Tarkanian would run for Congress." So my question is twofold. Is that an endorsement from the president for Danny in this race? And if elected, what parts of the president's agenda are you most eager to support? Danny, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I think it's more than an endorsement. An endorsement is when you have people that are in the race and the president picks one of those people out to support them. In this case, the president asked me specifically to run in this Congressional District 3 race. So I even think that's more than an endorsement. Furthermore, I'd had an opportunity to meet President Trump in the last election. As you know, and many of the viewers know, that I was the only federal candidate in Southern Nevada to support candidate Trump throughout the election. He came to our church ceremonies and he thanked me personally for having the courage to stand by him when the other GOP representatives in Nevada had repudiated him. And he said I was his main man. The things that I want to do is I believe very strongly in President Trump's America First agenda, what he articulated on the campaign trail and many of the things he's trying to accomplish now. I'm going to be a solid vote for him when I'm in Congress representing the CD3 in Nevada.
Senator?
All I can say is I saw the tweet, and I think that the tweet basically said, this is a U.S. Senate race that we need to win, and it would be great if we allowed Dean Heller to have a straight shot without having a primary. I know that Mr. Tarkanian has talked about it being an endorsement. I didn't see anything in there. The language never said, I endorse Danny Tarkanian. It just said it ought to be good if he got out and went into another race, a congressional race. It didn't even say CD3. So I don't know if there was any other, phone conversations or anything like that. I just know what I see, and it doesn't necessarily say I'm endorsing. As far as the agenda, I look forward to actually working with him to reopen these agreements we have, NAFTA for one, and other trade agreements, because I really feel like over the last few years that the American worker has been really given the shaft, so to speak, and I think that it would be nice to start reworking those for the American people.
Sure.
Well, the tweet did not use the word endorsement or support, and if you look at all the other previous endorsements that the president has put out on Twitter, they've always included those two words. In fact, this tweet said, hey, get out of Heller's race because you're ruining it for us. So I don't consider that an endorsement at all. When I win this primary and I have the opportunity to be the Congresswoman for CD3, the thing that I'm looking most forward to is helping the president with his entire agenda. In his first year in office, he's done more than any president has ever done, even in their first term, and he needs people in Congress who are going to work with him. During his State of the Union, for example, he laid out a brilliant 4-pillar plan for immigration. And what did Congress do? It got its panties in a bunch and said, well, no, we can't support that because my name's not on it. No, my name's not on it. No, my bill would be better. We need to get things done, and he needs someone who knows how to do that, and that's me.
All right, well, one thing that Democrats want to do, and Senator Hammond, we'll start with you, is push new gun control measures. October 1st was a tragedy here in Nevada. What, if any, gun control measures would you support in Congress?
Look, and I know a lot of people are looking at the gun control measure as a way to try and correct the ills of society, but I think they're going down the wrong path, to be honest with you. So I really am not looking forward to any kind of gun controls. I'm looking at what can we do to help our society correct itself. And I know one of the things that we keep talking about is making America great. Well, part of that is really strengthening the families, making sure that we're doing things to help the family unit survive and to prosper. And so that's what I think we really need to be looking at. I really don't think that gun control is necessarily the answer to everything, schools included. I think that we've been trying to figure out a way to secure our kids, and it's not always about gun control. There's a lot of other things that we could be putting into place, layers of security inside our schools to make sure our kids are safe. But that's what I think that we need to be looking at that. As far as bump stocks, about the only thing I can think of that we can all agree on that probably need to go away.
Okay.
I don't support any form of gun control. What I do support is protecting our kids, and I'm one of the few candidates who actually has a plan to do so by reformatting the Department of Education to create block grants for our schools. So each state can get its own block grant, and then the schools can then themselves decide what they need to be more secure, because some of them need armed guards, some of them need walls, some of them need security systems with cameras. Each school has to have what's best for them. What's needed in Boulder City is different than what's needed in Las Vegas. I also want to look at the mental health issue, because as a woman who spent 18 years on television, I've been stalked by several people. One schizophrenic man where the situation went too far in the state of Texas and no one could do anything to help me until a line was crossed. 1 in 100 people in this country deal with schizophrenia and mental health, and that is something that desperately needs to be looked at, and my life has been in danger because of it.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to address the first question that the first answer that Michelle Mortensen had. She has a hard time stating the truth. Nothing she stated was in President Trump's tweet. In fact, President Trump asked me to get in the CD3 race. It wasn't called an endorsement. Furthermore, as many of you know, Charles Munoz was asked to run in the Congressional District 3 seat by the White House because he wasn't happy with the people, including Michelle, that were already in the race. With respect to gun control, I will not vote for any measures that will take away our Second Amendment rights or any gun control measures. Now, the bumper stock was an administrative policy that was implemented under the Obama administration, and the Trump administration is going to rescind that through the administration process, and I think that's the right approach.
All right. Michelle, we're going to move to immigration. You know, just a couple of months ago, President Trump proposed exchanging an amnesty for 1.8 million illegal immigrants in exchange for about $25 billion in border funding. How would you have voted on that bill?
Well, first I just want to say, once again, it was not an endorsement. I was actually invited to the White House, and I was the only congressional candidate invited to the White House just a few days after that fake endorsement. So there you go. We can see who the real liar is. Maybe it's the 5-time loser. Or is it 8? I don't know. I keep losing count. I definitely support the president's immigration plan. His 4-pillar plan is a great compromise that I think we need to work on. We need to secure the border. As someone who has lived on both sides of the border, near the Canadian border and the Texas border, this is something we absolutely must take care of for our security, for our future. We need to have that wall. We need to have more border control agents. This is what we need, and we need to deal with immigration reform. We've had an opportunity to do this since the Reagan administration, and no one in Congress has been willing to do so. Our president is the first. We need Congress to get on board.
Danny?
Look, you're right. Michelle Mortensen was doing reports on OxyClean and salad spinners. I was out defending President Trump on Fox News, on MSNBC, while Michelle Mortensen was out retweeting negative comments about President Trump in the last election. I was out speaking at his rallies supporting him. President Trump asked me to run in this race. I never said it was an endorsement. I think it's more than an endorsement. With respect to immigration, we need to protect our borders. We need to get rid of the chain migration, except to the immediate spouse and kids. We need to get rid of the lottery system. We need to implement e-verification, which makes sure every employer who hires an employee verifies that they're here in the country legally. And at that point, then you can start talking about what to do with the people that are here in the country illegally that have been good residents. Okay.
I think it's a great question. I appreciate you bringing this up, because this is something that's been going on for 30 years plus. Ronald Reagan started this when we talk about how do you solve the immigration problem. I don't know if they went far enough with that particular bill or that particular agreement, because really you have to address all those issues all at one time, or else I don't think anybody gets what anybody wants. I think you have to solve everything at the same time. The 4 pillars of immigration, as Donald Trump brought up in his State of the Union address. I think and border security is not just the borders. Security is the ports, the port of entries, the airports. There's a lot of things going on out there. I think it really is an issue for public safety as well as human rights safety. So I think that we have to address the whole issue all at once in order to get it done.
All right, I want to drill down a little bit more on immigration. If Democrats retake the House, they're going to bring up the DREAM Act, which is basically an amnesty for people who are here under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and they aren't going to include any money for border security or mandatory E-Verify. Danny, starting with you, how would you vote on that bill?
You cannot vote to solve a problem with the people that are here illegally until you solve the problem to stop more people from coming here illegally. It's ridiculous, and it's just a political foil that the Democrats are using to try to get votes here in the elections. President Trump gave a more ambitious and generous proposal for the DREAM Act, Dreamers, than President Obama did, but the Democrats wouldn't agree to it because they want to use this as a partisan attack piece in the elections. And I think we as Republicans should run on this, and I believe very strongly we're going to get the Hispanic vote because they are seeing through the Democrats' political tool that they're being used as.
Senator?
Look, I don't want to kick this can down the road anymore. I think it could have been solved, should have been solved a long time ago. Like I said, it's been going on for 30 plus years. I really think that you have to make sure that everything is discussed at once. So it depends on what the bill looks like, what they're putting in that bill. But I really want to have all those components looked at. Chain migration. I want to make sure that we're also looking at not just the border security, but all those other ports that I just mentioned a second ago. You have to make sure that everything is addressed. That way, both sides can feel like they got what they needed out of it, and we can move on. This issue will be settled. Like I think everybody here would agree, this has gone on way too long, and people are using it as a political tool instead of solving this issue. And that's what you want. You want somebody who can go there, solve the issue, move on, and then get to something that also needs to be addressed. So that's how I would vote.
Michelle?
I think we all support the president's plan. What we need is pragmatic problem solvers in Congress, much like the president, in order to get it done. We have to be able to negotiate with the left to get what we need in this country, to get what's right for the American people. Now, I know Danny says that he was on Fox News as a commentator, but I was on real TV solving real problems and refunding Southern Nevadans $1.4 million, getting real action, winning the fights that no one else could. The big question is, who really knows how to negotiate? The negotiator or someone who loses elections?
Well, one problem that Nevada has been dealing with, or opportunity depending on how you look at it, is Yucca Mountain. Last week, the House of Representatives voted to restart funding for Yucca Mountain and shipping nuclear waste there. Senator, we'll start with you. What should we do with Yucca?
Well, really, I think the people of Nevada have already spoken about the issue of Nevada. They do not want this dump here. They have stated it time and time again. The people in District 3 do not want this here. If the science is there, then they're going to have to prove to the people that it's there. But the issue of Yucca Mountain, I mean, there's a reality, there's an issue, there's a reality. And the reality is Congress is taking votes, and we don't have enough representation there. We need a loud voice there that says we do not want it, to make sure that we don't get it. And for years that voice has been there, but now it's sort of absent. We need to make sure that we do not get this shoved down our throats. But having been in the legislature here, one of the things you learn right away is you have to count. And you have to count the number of votes, and we don't have those votes right now. So I personally am not in favor of it. The people of CD3 are not in favor of it, and that's how I would stand right now.
Michelle?
Amen. I echo the senator completely. I am not for Yucca Mountain. The people of CD3 are not for Yucca Mountain. This is not what they want. This all came about because of the so-called Screw Nevada amendment. That right there tells you it wasn't a good deal for Nevada. And what the bureaucrats in Washington did was when the scientific studies were done and it proved, hey, this isn't really a safe place, what did those bureaucrats do? They just went and changed the requirements. This is what's wrong with politicians. This is what's wrong with bureaucratic red tape. We need to do what's best for Nevada. We need to do what's best for CD3.
All right, Dana?
Yeah, look, nobody in Nevada that I know of wants to have the Yucca Mountain as a repository, a storage facility. We don't want it to happen. The problem is, as Scott Hammond said, we don't have the votes, so they're going to shove it down our throats no matter how much Michelle blows and says that we're going to negotiate. They're going to stick it down our throat if we don't find another alternative. The right alternative is turn it into a reprocessing facility of nuclear spent fuel like they do in France. You reprocess 98% of the nuclear spent fuel. You'd create a $90 billion construction project for the people of Nevada. You'd create hundreds of high-paying jobs. You'd be able to sell the nuclear spent fuel across the country and create an excess of money where Brian Sandoval, whoever the governor, will have all the money he wants for education, and Dean Heller will have everything he needs for Medicaid recipients. It's the right solution. We have 106 above-ground sites that store nuclear spent fuel, one of which is just 200 miles away from us. That's the real danger.
All right, I want to turn to abortion. You've all said that you're pro-life. Republicans in Congress and around the country have enacted or tried to enact a host of pro-life legislation. Michelle, starting with you, what's the first piece of pro-life legislation you would work on if you're elected?
I absolutely want to abolish late-term abortion after 20 weeks. I'm a pastor's wife. I'm on many pro-life charities and board. And I deal with so many of the pro-life charity groups here, First Choice Pregnancy Center, Living Grace Homes, Women's Resource Medical Center. I've spoken with all of them in great deal about that. That is the first thing that we need to go after, is getting rid of those late-term abortions when a baby can feel pain. I'm the only mother here. I've been pregnant 3 times. I have lost a baby. I've heard the heartbeats. I've heard the heartbeats go away. I know what it's like to have a baby inside of you, and anything after 20 weeks is just purely, purely barbaric, where they take a baby apart limb by limb.
Danny?
Yeah, I agree. One of the few things I agree with Michelle on, one of the things I would vote to pass legislation not allowing any abortions after 20 weeks. I wish we could go back further, but that's not what Roe versus Wade says. So I would certainly support and advocate the 20-week period. I'm the only candidate in this race that's been endorsed by the National Right to Life organization. And they did that because I have been the strongest advocate here in Nevada, advocating the protections of the unborn. I have done it for decades now. I just didn't move here 6 years ago and start advocating this position. This is something I've been advocating for decades now. With the National Right to Life endorsement, I will fight very hard to fulfill their trust in me.
Senator?
I've already voted several issues, several bills that would have either hurt us and those who believe that abortion is wrong, or help those who believe in the right to life. I've made those choices. I think that you can follow and find out how I feel about it. I'm an adoptive father myself. One of the things I would like to work on is bringing back that tax credit for those who do adoptions. It was so vital and actually spiked, I believe, the number of adoptions that were taking place. The opposition to our side is usually there are a lot of people who don't want to adopt, and I think that is, I think it's short-sighted. I think there are a lot of people who would love to take babies that for some reason, for one reason or another, just can't be in a family that they were born into, and I think that we need to help that by offering that tax credit.
All right, I want to turn to transgender issues. President Trump has said he doesn't think that transgendered people should be allowed to serve in the U.S. military. Danny, do you agree?
Well, I think that's up to the people in the military that are running the military, and they should make that decision. For one thing, people should be able to live their lives the way they want to live their lives. And for us to impose certain restrictions on them, it should only be if there is some type of national interest or enough interest, like in the military, if there weren't, it's going to affect the quality of the military and how they perform on the battlefield.
Senator?
Yeah, the generals, those who run the military, I think that they do know what's best for their troops. However, I will go back to Mr. Goldwater when he said, look, as long as they can shoot straight, I don't care what their affiliation is, how they conduct their lives, as long as they can shoot straight and put them out there. That's good enough for me.
Michelle?
Absolutely, I agree with these gentlemen as well. It's really up to our military to decide that issue, not up to us. And I know that a lot of us have a different belief systems, and that's what makes America so great. We can have different opinions on things, and that's fine. I know it makes some people uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, it's not about what makes us comfortable. It's about what's doing best for this country. And if someone wants to put their life on the line for this country and fight for this great country and keep our freedom, I say more power to them.
Well, speaking of disagreements, there's a case before the U.S. Supreme Court right now involving a baker in Colorado and whether or not it is illegal discrimination for the Christian baker to say, no, I'm not going to bake a cake for a gay wedding. Is that a case of religious liberty, or should that be a case of discrimination? Senator, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's a case of religious liberty. I believe that in the end, if that baker decides they do not want to bake a cake for somebody and they said, look, I'm refusing service, that's fine. That should be a final decision. The thing is, they're going to suffer an economic consequence. There's going to be people who say, I'm not going to go ahead and go to that establishment. I'm not going to frequent them. I'm not going to give them, I'm not going to patronize them. I'm not going to give them anything. And that's the free market. That's the way it works. And so if you don't agree with that, then of course people will say, look, I'd rather go to a baker who does both kinds of weddings. And I think that's the free market at its best. But I believe that people have the right to decide religiously how they feel and express that, even if it's through their work.
Michelle?
Absolutely. Well, as a business, you have the right to refuse service to whomever you want to. I mean, how many times do you go to a restaurant and it says no shirt, no shoes, no service? So as a business, you have that right. As a Christian, as a pastor's wife, and as a licensed minister myself, I don't quite understand why anyone would ever choose to refuse to bake a cake for someone based on their sexual orientation. And it will affect your business poorly. I believe that as Christians, we're supposed to love all people no matter what, and that there's no benefit to say you aren't going to do that type, bake a cake. So I don't understand why bakers do that, but they certainly do have the right to refuse if they so desire. The issue for me with religious freedom is that as a minister, if you don't feel that you should perform a wedding for a gay couple, I feel that you have that right as a minister, as part of your religious freedom and as a pastor.
Yeah, I think it's a religious freedom, and they should have the right to decide who they're going to service or not, as long as it's not under one of the protective classes that the Constitution protects. There is some things you cannot deny in businesses. You can't deny service for race and other things. But it's got to be a legitimate reason, and it's got to be a legitimate one. And if it's based upon their religion, everybody in America should be able to live their lives the way they want to live their lives without government interference, unless there's a substantial impact upon the others around them. And I don't believe baking a cake in one location is a substantial impact upon the other people. But I agree with Scott. If you turn it down, you're hurting your own business, and I think it's going to be a detriment to the company itself.
All right, I want to turn to spending issues. In March, Congress passed a $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. It contained money for Planned Parenthood, very little money for the wall. It exploded the deficit. It did contain quite a bit of money for the military. Michelle, starting with you, how would you have voted on that bill?
I would not have voted for that disastrous omnibus bill. I am sick and tired of Congress just punting the can along because they don't want to deal with the budget. That bill proved to us that Republicans and Democrats are no better than one another. All they love to do is spend, spend, spend. They just like to spend it on different things. That was a disgusting bill that should not have happened, but it happened to keep the government open, and everybody got what they wanted, right? But the American people were the ones who lose because the deficit goes up again. And all of those politicians who promised that they wouldn't fund Planned Parenthood, well, gosh golly, they just gave them more money.
Yeah. I would not have voted for it. I think it was a horrendous bill, and I'm very disappointed that President Trump signed that bill. I'm more disappointed that Congress would have submitted it for his signature. Now, we control the House and we have the Senate. If the Democrats were going to shut down the government because we're not going to give $250 million to Planned Parenthood, who is a for-profit organization that performs abortions, let that be on their heads. It would have killed them in the elections. If they were going to shut down the bill because we weren't going to give billions, tens of billions of dollars to build a tunnel between New Jersey and New York, let that be on their heads. We have to be fiscally responsible for our children and our grandchildren. We are leaving a debt out there that is going to destroy this country. It's going to destroy the future of our kids and our grandkids. That's why we need people with courage and conviction to vote the tough votes, and that's what I will do when I'm in Washington, D.C.
Senator?
Well, as the only person on this stage right now who has actually voted on a budget, I'll tell you this: in the last budget, I told people if there was a certain issue that was, the ESAs, if it wasn't part of the budget, I would vote no. And I voted no, and I had to do it twice in some cases on different parts of that budget. The part that I didn't like about this bill, about this particular budget, was that it still did not address the debt issue. We are in debt, and it's going to hurt us. It's going to come back to haunt us. I don't want to be the next Greece. I don't want to be the next country that has to worry about how they're going to feed their people. Until we have a budget that addresses this, I would continue to vote no on it until we put in writing how we're going to solve that problem. So we're not passing it, we're not punting it down, we're not going to kick it down the road again until our grandkids have the same problem.
All right. And coming up, there'll be questions about entitlements, Obamacare, and foreign policy. Stick with us through this commercial break. Welcome back to the special debate edition of Nevada Politics Today. We are talking with the three leading candidates for Congressional District 3. Danny, let's go right to entitlements. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid make up about 70% of the federal government's budget. What needs to change, if anything, in those programs?
Well, first of all, with respect to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, these are things that we have paid in, and we have guaranteed to people that they would have this type of benefits at a certain age. What I think we need, so I'm not in favor of taking away those benefits. I'm not in favor of capping them for people that make a certain income. It's not fair just because a person was more successful that we're going to say you're not going to get back what you paid in for taxes. What we can do is we can raise the minimum age for Social Security and Medicare, because when Social Security was first passed, the average life expectancy was 59 years. Now it's 78 years. So 19 years has increased our life expectancy, and we've only raised the level of the ability to get Social Security and Medicare 1 or 2 years. We should raise that up, but we need to give people enough time to anticipate this raise, so it shouldn't be until people are only in the 30s or just getting into the 40s before that would take effect.
Senator?
As noted, these are things that we pay into, so they're not necessarily entitlements. It's something that we've paid into with a certain promise at the end. One of the things I think we could work in there, though, is choice. I mean, I'm a big advocate for choice, and there are some, especially in those younger generations, who would prefer to have a different, different payment plan, or a different, maybe not Social Security, maybe something else that they pay into that may have the risk, maybe a higher risk, but a little bit more reward. And so I think that we need to start looking at that and allowing people to have some more say into what style of savings they would like to see. But I really don't want to. I want to make sure that people who have been paying into this still have it. I'm not in favor of taking it away from anybody, because I think it's something that, this is something that they've been looking forward to.
Michelle?
Liberals in the media love to cry foul every time we bring up Social Security and Medicare, and they say, don't touch it, you're an awful human being if you do. But right now, Social Security and Medicare are on record to be insolvent in 17 years. So not touching it and putting your head in the sand and going, ooh, I hope it all works out, isn't going to work out for anyone. We've all paid into this system. We need to fix the problem. And to fix the problem, you have to be brave enough to address it. One of the things that the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has looked at is ways that we can make cuts from entitlement spending like Medicare without affecting patient care whatsoever. One of the many things that they have come up with is if you just change the way that payouts are done, you could save $50 million. If you deal with generic drugs, you can save a lot of money. There are things that can be done that won't affect patient care one iota, but you got to be brave enough to do it.
Well, speaking of brave, Republicans talked about Obamacare and repealing that and ended up not doing that last year. Starting with you, Senator, do you support repealing Obamacare, and if so, what should a replacement look like?
Well, look, at this point, I think it's almost inevitable that going forward, we're going to have to make changes to it. Obamacare is killing the middle class. The premiums are going up way too high. It's killing our businesses, especially our small businesses. There has to be changes made. And if we can't all agree on getting rid of the whole thing and making a completely new formatted change, then we have to figure out what we can do to make sure that those premiums don't continue to skyrocket, that we're not putting our families in jeopardy. And that might be the plan going forward. It may be that Obamacare is too entrenched, but we still have to address these problems that are going to be killing the middle class and killing small businesses. And so we have to make sure we take a knife to this if possible. I'd love to repeal it, but I just don't know if all the votes are there.
Michelle?
We absolutely need to repeal and replace. Right now, the Affordable Care Act is affordable in name only. For so many families, their premiums are skyrocketing. We were with some of our Democrat opponents this weekend, and one of the Democrat candidates for this very seat said that he's not sure he's going to be able to continue to insure his family of 4 next year because of the skyrocketing premiums. This is unacceptable. Republicans know it. Democrats know it. Everyone knows it but Congress. They're the only ones who don't want to act. This is why we need pragmatic problem solvers in Congress who have a proven history of getting things done and solving problems, and not career politicians who are part of the establishment who are just going to go and toe the line. We have to look at spending. We have to solve the problems. We have to see if block grants are the solution, but we all got to come to the table.
Michelle in the Nevada Independent said she wasn't sure she would vote to repeal Obamacare. It depends what the alternative is. I will give you my solemn promise. I'm voting to repeal Obamacare, period. The Affordable Care Act is unaffordable, pure and simple. Hardworking middle-class Americans like my family have seen our premiums go up from $480 a month to $1,840 a month. Our deductibles from $1,000 a month to $5,000 a month, and to see a copay to see a specialist from $25 to $150 a month. The people that are getting screwed by Obamacare, hardworking middle-class Americans, they need somebody in Washington, D.C. who will be their voice. I will be that voice. Get back to market principles, create more competition. Every time we create more competition, we get a better product at a lower cost, and we need to get the product cost out to the public so they know what the cost is when they're purchasing it to determine whether they should use that service or another one.
I want to turn to foreign policy for a couple of questions. This week, the U.S. opened an embassy in Jerusalem. Recently, President Obama withdrew from the Iran deal. Michelle, starting with you, what do you think about Trump's foreign policy moves when it comes to the Middle East?
It's been absolutely brilliant. There is no pathway to peace unless we have Jerusalem as the capital. This is the beginning. This is absolutely what we need to do so that we can have peace, because peace was never going to happen without that element of it. Pulling out of the Iran deal was a brilliant move. Not only did President Trump do exactly what he said he was going to do, so it was a promise made and a promise kept, but the Iran deal was bad for everyone except for Iran, and it paved the way for a nuclear Iran. This deal was bad for Israel, it was bad for America, and that means it was bad for the world. The Bible states it very clearly. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. President Trump is doing an amazing job when it comes to foreign policy, particularly with the Middle East, and I believe we will be blessed. Nikki Haley walked out of the UN today when the Palestinians began to talk. We need this firm, strong type of leadership.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think President Obama is doing a great job foreign policy-wise. North Korea, we haven't mentioned. But with respect to moving the capital to Jerusalem, do you know that Israel is the only country in the entire world that can't dictate where they wanted their capital? Isn't it about time we do so? You also know that Israel is the only country in the entire world that has had Jerusalem as their capital in the entire history. Palestine never had that. Why shouldn't we be able to do that? Thank goodness for the courage and conviction President Trump has to fulfill his promises. And yes, the Iran deal was one of the worst deals ever passed. You got to wonder why they even wanted to pass it. I know President Obama wanted some type of a legacy, but this is such a disgraceful legacy. I'm glad to see that President Trump is dropped out of that.
Well, I'll say this, we haven't seen this kind of foreign diplomacy and excitement in foreign diplomacy since the Reagan era, when he had a clear vision of what he wanted to accomplish during his presidency. That's what we're seeing here. We're seeing somebody who's very decisive, even when it comes to North Korea and what's going on in North Korea and the hopes of talks here in June. I think it's important because we're seeing a little bit of a sort of an open door now with North Korea. There's a potential to really open that door, and I think that's great. Jerusalem, look, years and years ago, the United States Congress, they voted bipartisanly to put the embassy in Jerusalem. So when you hear of all these people who are now going crazy about, oh, I can't believe this is happening, and it's all politics. It's pure politics when somebody is upset about the decision that Trump had made when he said before he went into office, I'm going to do this, and he did it. That is leadership, and I think that everybody needs to back away and support that.
And I do want to talk about North Korea. The president and Kim Jong-un are meeting on June 12th to discuss potential denuclearization. What does a good deal with North Korea look like?
Deneutralizing North Korea and getting them to get rid of all the nuclear weapons and having a verified method to make sure they're not restarting the nuclear program. I think if we have to give it some concessions, whether it's withdrawing some troops from South Korea, maybe not having as many military joint actions with South Korea. Look, if we can get nuclear weapons out of North Korea, President Trump should be given the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a great, great, great accomplishment, and that would be the best deal he can get.
I think just opening up negotiations, diplomacy, opening up that country like it hasn't been for many years. I think that is a positive step forward. And so anything that can happen in June that would allow that scenario to take place, I think is a good step, and I'd like to see that. Of course, if they can put something on the desk of Congress and say, sign this, where we're actually taking nuclear weapons or diminishing the availability of them or the progress towards even more, I think that'd be great as well. But I just think opening up trade, opening up, maybe not trade, but opening up some sort of diplomacy where we're sending people in and they're sending people over here, and we're opening up those avenues of discussion. I think that's wonderful.
Michelle?
I think we've already seen that opening up discussion really does work. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and hoping for a different result, kind of like voting for Danny Tarkanian over and over again and thinking he's actually going to win. What Donald Trump has done is that he went in there and he did things differently. He didn't do things like every other president has done. And he spoke very, very strongly, and he wielded that big stick, and it had a great result. And you know what the media did, and you know what liberals did? They said, oh, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Oh, the boy who cried wolf. Oh, there's going to be war. Oh, there's going to be this. None of it happened. Now did it? Talking, and sometimes talking strongly and building relationship, it actually can work. That's what good negotiators do. And Donald Trump has shown that he's an excellent, shrewd negotiator, and it's working quite well.
I want to turn quickly to the topic of education, something that's important to I know everyone up here. What's the federal government's role in education, Senator?
The federal role is really to support the states in their decisions. The decision making should be taking place at the state level, what the states need. And I think that's important because we all know, and it's been known for a long time, that the states are supposed to be the petri dishes. They're supposed to experiment what works for their population, what works to make sure that they're moving along and getting the kids the education that they need and satisfying the parents. I really believe that the federal role should be to support that. For example, we passed here the education savings account. We have that framework now for education choice in the state of Nevada. If the federal government said we'd like to help by putting some money into that system, that is the role. I think that they could help with that. If the decision is made at the state level and the federal government wants to help with that decision, then they ought to be able to do that. I don't want to put any more decision making on their end.
Even when President Jimmy Carter birthed the idea of the Department of Education, he even said at that time that the responsibility of education relies mainly in the states, or at least that it should. So we need to have a little bit more of a hands-off approach and give more power to the states, because no one's going to know better how to educate their kids than the states, just as no one's going to know better than their parents, which is why school choice is so amazing and why I honor Scott so much because of what he did with the essays. They were absolutely brilliant, and school choice is something we really need to look into more. So I want to give more state rights. And I really think, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Education should be focusing on issues like block grants, making our schools safer. Because as a mom of 2 little girls, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, it terrifies me every single day to know that something bad can happen and they have to do these shelter-in-place drills. We want to make our schools safer. That's where the federal government should step in.
Yeah, the Department of Education should have a very limited purpose. Education should be left to the people closest to its jurisdiction, where the kids are being taught. They know best what's for them, and they have different needs based upon whether they're in a big urban area, suburban area, or out in the rural parts of the town. But what I think now has happened is the teachers' unions have gotten so much strength throughout the country that we need the federal government to implement school choice, and they can do that. We were going to because of Scott's bill and the others, they passed school choice here in Nevada, but they wouldn't allow it to be funded with the way they want it. But you can fund it with the money that's coming from the federal government. You give the states block grants to give all children, not just a certain group of them, the right to pick and choose which school the parents feel is best for them. You're going to, again, create more competition. You're going to get a better product at a lower cost, and that's the way you solve our education problem.
The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. The SEIU, other unions have pushed for that to be $15 an hour. Michelle, what should the federal minimum wage be?
You know, I completely understand why people want to raise the minimum wage, because so many people live paycheck to paycheck, multiple jobs, and it's hard to make ends meet. I understand that, but I don't believe that raising the minimum wage is the answer, because raising the minimum wage could also see the elimination of many jobs. How many times do you walk into a McDonald's now and there aren't people working there and you're supposed to type it in yourself? We want to create more jobs. We want to create more opportunity. We want to create ways where people can have higher paying jobs and go up the ranks. So that means more vocational training. That means what we're doing with tax reform so that more businesses can grow and hire more people. That's the solution to the problem, where we will see people making more money. Do you know that so many people who graduate from the Hope for Prisoners program, they're able to get jobs with the laborers union, and they're making over $30 an hour. There are high paying jobs out there.
Yeah, the argument to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, first of all, it's failed in the areas of had it. You look at what's happening in Washington, and they're losing jobs, they're losing people that are maybe getting, fewer people are getting paid more money, but you have less people that have a job and they're leaving the state of Washington. Second of all, they're not even credible enough to eliminate people that are getting tips. You know, I met with Gino Ferraro from the Great Ferraro restaurant here in Las Vegas the other day, and he said if they raise the minimum wage up to $15 an hour, or substantially more than what it is now, their tip people would be making over $100,000 a year to drive him out of business. We need to be more proactive in creating jobs and opportunities and allowing people to move up the ladder. This is supposed to be a stepping stone for higher and better employment. That's what these entry-level jobs are.
Okay.
Look, messing with the rate is disastrous. Right now, business owners, they work under razor-thin margins. I know there's a lot of talk out there, and people are always talking about what greedy people are that are, own businesses. And the reality is, 98% of those businesses that I deal with, they hire people because they want to make sure that they take care of the families that work for them, and they try to take care of them the best they can. But they're working with razor-thin margins. Messing with the minimum wage, it only serves to screw this system up. And what you really need is opportunities. We've mentioned that we have to give kids the right education so that they can get the right job coming out of either high school or coming out of college. We have worked at the state level. Look, over the last 6 or 7 years that I've been in the state legislature, we have changed some things to allow businesses to make better decisions moving forward. We've created in the state, 250,000 private sector jobs that are better paying, higher quality jobs than we had before the recession. So we're moving in the right direction. Okay. But when you start to raise that minimum wage up, you are actually you're taking jobs away from people.
And before we go to closing statements, June 12th is coming. 2 of you will not be in the race. I just want to do a quick yes and no. Will you support the eventual Republican winner, whoever it is?
Yes.
Yes, I will.
Absolutely.
All right, and we'll go to the 2-minute closing statements. Danny, we'll start with you and move down the line.
For the viewers here that live in CD3, you have a unique opportunity. You in CD3 can very well determine which party is going to control Congress. It's one of those few districts that are evenly split registration rights, and maybe the only district that the Republicans can take back from the Democrats. It is so important that President Trump himself got involved in this race and asked me to run in this race. As many of you know, I was the nominee for the Republican Party in 2016. I lost by 1%, which was the closest race anybody on the GOP had in a major race in the last election. The top of the entire GOP came out against candidate Trump except myself. I stayed and supported him to the end, but it brought all of us down. President Trump thanked me personally for having the courage to stand with him and said I was his main man. He realizes I have the best chance to win this race. This race, and he also said it's very important for me to win this race because then it'll allow him to have a better chance of getting the America First agenda passed, which he knows I believe very strongly in. He also knows I have the courage and conviction to vote for his American First policies, even when the liberal media and others attack people who are having to decide that vote. He knows that because I had the courage and conviction to support him when everybody else in the GOP abandoned him in the 2016 elections. He knows I'm a fighter. He knows I never give up. Michelle likes to make little remarks about me losing some races. You haven't lost until you quit trying. It's the people that keep battling and fighting. They're the ones who make the big difference in life. You never lose until you quit trying. And finally, it's time for the hardworking middle-class Americans to have a voice in Washington, D.C. For too many years, special interest groups have dominated the real wealthy and the poor. They left middle-class Americans stuck with the bill, such as Obamacare. I will be your voice, and I will bring that courage and conviction to fight for you. I'll bring that fight and determination to never give up, and that's my promise to you, the residents of CD3.
Senator?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Victor and the Review Journal for having this forum because, after 16 years of being in the classroom, teaching government to young people, it was really important to always talk about the freedom of speech and really getting involved in politics. The best way to get involved in politics is really to know who you're voting for. So this is a forum and an opportunity for those voters in CD3 to see who they have to vote for or vote to support. And so first of all, thank you for that. I've said this often, and I think it bears repeating because I think it's important. I'm not looking for a fancy title or a fancy office. I've the 2 titles that I've only ever wanted my whole life. And that's father and husband. I'm doing this because I really feel that this is something I'm good at. I've done it for the last 6 or 7 years up in the state legislature. I've made the tough decisions. When I got into office in 2010, we were in a bad place in the state of Nevada. Foreclosures were among the highest in the nation. We didn't have any investment going on in the state. There were no jobs being created. The construction industry was leaving us. We had 14% unemployment. You fast forward a few more years and the jobs, the decisions that we made, and again, I keep reiterating, these were tough decisions we had to make. I had to press that button, yes sometimes and no sometimes. These are things that I have done already and I'm ready to do again. What we created over, now in 2018, you fast forward to the state of Nevada in 2018, we have the lowest unemployment we've had in a long time. It's under 5%. Really, anybody who wants to get a job will get a job. Going back to that question about the minimum wage, the reality is people are making more money now because they're in demand. That's how the market works. They're making that money without having to raise that minimum wage. They're making that because we have created a scenario where we keep employing people, or we're allowing the private sector to work as the private sector should. We're at that place. I love what we've created because we have businesses moving into the state of Nevada. They were before leapfrogging us and going to other places, but they're coming here. Businesses are expanding here. We're on the right path. We're going in the right direction. It's the same sort of mentality I'll bring to the U.S. Congress with me.
Michelle?
I'm fighting for you, CD3, because you are worth fighting for. I was brought to Southern Nevada to help solve problems for you, to have your back because you needed someone on your side to give you a voice. It was the bottom of the recession in 2011, and no one felt like anyone was doing anything for them. So I came in and I began to fight for you. When you had battles with Social Security, I was there. When you had problems with squatters, I was there. When you had problems with insurance companies, hospital bills, pharmaceutical companies, I was there. When you had problems with the VA, I was there. I fought and I won for you. I've sacrificed everything. I no longer have a career. I no longer have a job. I am simply trying to serve you because we deserve better. We deserve quality candidates who can get things done. We deserve congressional representation that is someone who is a pragmatic problem solver. We don't need perennial candidates who have lost election after election after election after election. We don't need people who betrayed us by voting for the commerce tax. We need someone who is going to stand alongside us and fight for us and represent you and give you your voice. It's time that we no longer have to put up with the establishment. We no longer have to put up with career politicians. That's the reason we voted for our president. Because he wasn't a career politician, because he was a problem solver who gets things done, because he was a winner. We don't vote for losers. We don't vote for career politicians who are just trying for the higher office, higher office, higher office, or actually keep running over and over and over again because they can't get an office. This is about not becoming powerful. This is about service. It's about being a servant leader. You should be very leery of someone who just wants more power, and even though they lose election after election, they just won't give up. That's not resilience. That's showing your true colors.
All right, and we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Danny, Senator, and Michelle, and thank you for watching. Remember, if it involves Nevada politics, we're talking about it right here on Nevada Politics Today. I'll see you next week.